Blowout by Rachel Maddow, published in the year 2019. I picked this book up from the library a couple of weeks back just by looking at its front cover without even remotely bothering about what is inside it. And guess what? Serendipitously, it turned out to be a very good read. To provide you with a bit of a context of what this book is all about, we can sort of loosely categorize this book into three major sections. Rachel delves into the oil and the gas industry from the perspectives of United States of America and Russia and their respective attempts to become the global energy leaders. The book starts with tracing the history of oil industry in the United States since the days of Mr. John D. Rockefeller, who founded out the Standard Oil Company back in 1870. Owing to a Supreme Court rule in the year 1911, the Standard Oil Company was forced to split itself into multiple small entities, some of which later became big corporations such as ExxonMobil, Chevron Corporation, etc. The book also does a deep dive into the origins and life cycles of two more energy companies in the United States. Chesapeake Energy, founded by Aubrey McClendon in the year 1989, and Continental Resources, founded by Harold Hamm in the year 1967. Along the way, we also get benefited by knowing some of the technologies that is currently being used in this industry. One is called the hydraulic fracturing, which is also known as fracking. And the other one is about the various drilling practices currently being used. One is vertical and the other one is horizontal. On the other hand, when we are taking the example of Russia, Rachel tries to explore the oil and gas industry up close since Mr. Vladimir Putin came into power. Mr. Putin has been trying to build the economy of Russia solely on the oil and gas industry, during the course of which it has not allowed any other industries to come up, prosper, or contribute to the state's economy. Not only that, the biggest oil and gas companies in Russia, Rosneft and Gazprom respectively, are state-controlled, meaning Putin-controlled. Despite the fact that Russia has got the biggest oil and gas deposits in the world, what ails these companies is the technological expertise to explore and produce results out of these vast deposits. These companies, in turn, are heavily dependent on US companies like ExxonMobil for their technical expertise. However, it has become extremely difficult for Russia to collaborate with companies like ExxonMobil since when US has applied sanctions on them. As a second major topic, Rachel brings up the detrimental effects of this oil and gas industry, such as the environmental damages, the resource curse, the various perks this industry enjoys, adding overheads to the national budget, impacts of this industry on the democratic processes of a country, and the corruption it introduces in its wake. Some of the deep dive studies that Rachel has written down are mind-boggling. For example, believe it or not, humans can generate earthquakes. Oklahoma has been experiencing an increase in the number of earthquakes since the year 2009, and the seismologist has been able to directly correlate this increase to the fracking and the wastewater injection done by these oil companies. This human-induced seismicity was first mapped out by Mr. Austin Holland, who was the lead seismologist who was working for the state of Oklahoma then. The leading oil companies there in Oklahoma were lobbying against this theory, and you cannot imagine the level of pressure Mr. Austin Holland was undergoing at that point in time. The Deepwater Horizon oil spill happened in the year 2010, led by British Petroleum, is considered as the biggest and the worst oil spill that ever happened in the history of humankind. The inquiry committee discovered some startling findings that the disaster management or the risk mitigation plans of these behemoth organizations are utterly useless. Rex Tillerson, who was the then CEO of ExxonMobil, said that when such kind of disasters happen, there is no way that any oil companies can effectively manage them. which is really frightening to hear. Another major problem that she mentioned earlier was the corporation-driven corruption and threat to democracy. She cites the example of the African country Equatorial New Guinea. This country has got huge oil deposits, and all the major oil companies going out there introduces corruption as a way to ensure their businesses are not challenged. These oil companies do whatever they could do to make sure a puppet administration stays in power in that country. A resultant of this is uneven wealth distribution, poverty, and all those ensuing problems. This country, Equatorial New Guinea, despite the fact that it has got the highest GDP among its African peers, is still considered as one of the worst countries to live in. Rachel calls this phenomenon resource curse. And the final section is about all the vicious activities done by the Russian Federation since Mr. Vladimir Putin took charge of the office. Rachel kind of beautifully explained the rise of Mr. Putin, Mr. Igor Sechin, and all those Silovikis in general taking control of not only the Kremlin, but the future of Russia. Since when Mr. Putin came into power, it marked the demise of private independent industries. One of the examples she gave was about the imprisonment of Mr. Mikhail Khodorkovsky, who was the founder of Yukos, which was the biggest oil company back in the 1990s. When Mr. Putin saw Yukos not aligning to his expectations and ideas, the next thing that happened was Mikhail Khodorkovsky was imprisoned for 10 years for a lawsuit of some unpaid taxes, which was mostly fabricated. And immediately after that, Yukos was bought by an unknown oil company called Rosneft, which was later identified as controlled by Putin. Annexation of Crimea in the year 2014 by Russian Federation is considered as one of the most horrific incursions in the recent times by the international community. Also, the book provides some interesting insights into how Russia rigged the 2016 presidential elections in the United States using its Internet Research Agency. All in all, it provides a very good account of the authoritarian rule in Russia, stunting its growth in the global arena, which is another example of resource curse. In a nutshell, this book offers some valuable insights into one of the most powerful industries in the world and what this industry is capable of doing. Through all those various examples that is laid in front of us, we are reminded time and again that it is time we tamed this industrial juggernaut. The only dampening thing about this book from my perspective is that even though the majority of the focus of this book has been the oil and gas industry and the related subjects, when it segues into Russia and its thuggish demeanor, I find this section as distinctively disconnected from the rest of the sections. But I'm not complaining because the book delivered what it promised. Alright, that's all from me in this video. I hope you like this video. So until next time, bye.